Well, howdy all you collector car fans out there. This is Jason, the owner and founder of Southern Bush Motorsports. I thought this would be a nice little treat for you. I just pulled some random cars in barns and fields and swamps and whatever pictures. Nice little Shelby GT convertible right there. GTO convertible. So this is just a whole bunch of random cars and barns pictures that I've got on my computer, and it's just a tiny little fraction of the stuff that I have. So just sit back, relax, and let's just check on some pretty cool cars that I got there. That right there is a plain Jane Charger, but I can't remember if it was a six-pack or an air driver car, but another GTX beside it. And this was a field. I was glad the guy kept cutting the grass around. It made it a little bit easier, but these cars are what's called Carolina rot, which means all the paint's burnt off them from the heat, but they're still pretty solid. That's a 70 Chevelle SS 396 car, 4-speed. That car sold for $1,000 because the lady got duped on it when her husband died, and I couldn't make it out there. It's a Mach 1 Mustang sitting there. That car was pretty complete. It was about to go into a restoration shop, and it ended up sitting there. As you can see, it sunk down into the dirt and sitting there so darn long. I wish I could get this guy to come to it. SS 396 Chevelle, sitting there out in the boondocks. I think I was in Kentucky, and not for sale. Matter of fact, he ran me off the property. It's a 70 440. I believe that was a six-pack Superbird. Screwdriver holding up the headlight covers and just sitting in a barn. Let's see what else we got here. There's a couple pretty cool Chargers just sitting there, lying in the dirt. Doesn't help much, but with cold ground like that, it actually preserves them pretty good because not a lot of moisture underneath it. That is a, if I remember right, that was a 440 Daytona. Been taken apart, but it was all there. It was all behind the car and beside the car. Pretty cool barn find, that one right there. It's an old satellite I found in a restoration shop, but it was one of four 426 Hemi cars. All of them still had the motor in them too, as you can see the weight on there. This is the cow barn in Texas I had done a story on. Didn't realize so many people would be interested in something like that, but it was a really cool story, and I had, well, I can't say fun doing it. This car right here was a completely untouched Challenger, except for the big ass tree that fell onto the back of it, and I think it had a fender replaced in the front. But pretty cool car. Oh, sorry, there's a shameless selfie there of a Coronet that I pulled out. I can't remember why I pulled that car out. I really don't remember why I pulled that car out. The infamous two Superbirds. That was a rough time for me trying to track down these cars, and somebody beat me to it by about a week. But those were two Superbirds, and the guy would never sell them. He ended up selling them to a guy that went in there as a father and son team. Yep, that is a Challenger that is buried in crawbrush. Crawbrush was horrible and painful. Oh, look at all these Roadrunners just lined up. Roadrunners and GTXs just all over the place. That was a fun trip. Guy was really cool, showed me all of his cars. Just had hundreds of cars all over the place. He just pulled them off the side of the road. Gunmetal, looks like that was a Roadrunner. Super cool car, completely untouched. And look how solid the car is. Way up north, it's solid. There's a GTO. Let's just throw all of our crap against this extremely classic car, and we'll just forget about it. Yes, sir. Let's see what we got here. Look at this right here. This was part of that 1,278 cars out in with Wisconsin, just piled on top of each other, and some really cool cars just destroyed out of ignorance. This right here, I'll do a story on that later, is a really cool car. That says 383 Magnum on it, but everything else inside the car was all Hemi. Story that I heard was that there was a 2-day period where they ran out of Hemi blocks, and I'll talk about it later. That's a 57 Chevy Bel Air convertible. Not a big deal, rotted all to hell. 19 original miles, documented. That thing was rough. Look at that right there. Shelby GT500 convertible. It's sitting after it was pulled out of a building, and I tried to bid on this car. Nothing. There's a Challenger RT SE 440. I believe it was a 4-speed, 4-row car. I got quite a few pictures of that car right there. That's not an RT or anything like that, but you know, that was a rough Charger. but it was a pretty complete Charger. Pretty nice car. That's an old picture that was taken back in the 80s. And there's somebody flying on the back of a Superbird. That was taken a long time ago too. I can't remember. I think it was a follower that sent me that picture about 20 years ago. But you know, it is what it is. There's a nice Challenger. Doesn't look like it's an RT, but there's another Challenger in the background. Again, this picture was probably taken back in the 80s. It looks like gunmetal gray. That one right there looks like gunmetal gray. I don't even need to tell you what that one is. That looks like a 71 Cuda convertible. You see the gill fenders right there, but that car was rough, and that's exactly where it was found, right there. Ouchie, ouchie, ouchie. If I remember the story right on that, that was a guy coming out of a car show with that Superbird, and he got rear-ended, sideswiped. It was just rough. You ever seen one of these before? Coronet 500? I got a few pictures of this, and it was a car that was, pictures were sent in me by somebody, but I'd never seen one before. Look at that weird front end. And the car was super, super solid and completely untouched. Look at that thing. That's just the weirdest looking thing. But, you know, look at the bottom. It's got the thing along the door and that. You know, nothing fancy, nothing super incredibly rare, but I had never seen a Coronet 500. Hey, let's just throw a bunch of convertibles out. Look at all the cars lined up in the back of that field. At least the guy cut the grass around the cars, and he sold parts off the cars, which didn't help. There was a picture of a car that was sent to me a long time ago of a building that I found with all these cars in it. But that car right there wasn't in it when I found it, so it's a pretty old picture. Yeah, let's just line up a whole bunch of Mopars here. 70 Charger. And that 70 Charger was a pants paint car too. Tons of cars out there. That was a long trip. You can see my van on the road there. Coronet 383 convertible. This was a super cool car. Not only did this car sit for a long time, it was completely untouched, super solid, and I drove that thing onto the trailer. It was so much fun. I drove it around a little bit before I loaded it onto the trailer because it ran and drove just fine. Needed to be restored, but look at those floors. Floors are super solid in it. Underneath the hood, everything's there. I mean, it was pretty simple back then. There wasn't much to these cars. Just a beauty. Nice fun car to drive around for a little bit. Usually don't get to drive these cars too much because usually I'm moving them pretty hard, but I did get to drive around a few just to kind of let off some steam. And this car lit up the tires pretty good, even though it had been sitting for so long. Look at the interior of that car. The floor pans are so solid for such an old car. And the interior is completely untouched, all original. They just tore out the car because it was all crap. Yeah, really cool car. Well, that looks like a 70 Coronet RT convertible. And that would be a pretty rare cat right there. The 440 car, if I remember right. But the car was pretty solid. And it was sitting outside of, you see a GTX sitting beside it there. Car was sitting outside of a restoration shop, and I had run into the guy, and he had just a ton of cars. But anything that was missing off the car was inside the car. And I guess it had been brought to him by a customer that wanted it restored, and something happened, the customer left it there, and it was his now, and he had the title for it and everything. Put a mechanics lien on it. We got a GTX beside it. But yeah, this was kind of a weird place. They just had so many super cool cars that were in the middle of restorations. That's where you can find a lot of cars. Find a restoration shop. They usually got a ton of cars sitting around, and some of them are cars that they might sell. You never know. You just got to go. If you don't go, you don't know. That was the saying that I had when I was out doing my thing. There's a 70 Dart, just covered in craw brush out in the grass right there. And you know, when I go into places like this down in the deep south, that's dangerous because there's snakes, black widow spiders, brown recluse spiders. There's another, that looks like another 70 Dart swinger, but you know, super solid, super complete. That car was completely untouched. But you know, it was a 6-cylinder car. I'm not gonna spend my time to pull that out unless I need a donor car. There's a nice Dart sitting out there in the middle of nowhere. All the wheels, looks like the rear end's out of it. But you know, these cars are lying all over the place. They're always out there. Another Dart swinger. I think the grill was missing off that car, but actually, is that a Dart? Yeah, I think it's a Dart. And but that was a good solid car. I don't know what that is, but somebody left the door open and the weeds grew inside the door and then started to brace themselves inside the car. It was kind of ironic. That's why I took that picture. Oh, I learned a valuable lesson about this. I found that car right there where it says little Dodge Dart Demon. I can't remember what it was, but had a 6-cylinder in it. I put some gas in that thing, drove it around, and the motor seized. And that's when I realized that before they put the car down, they stuck varnish in the gas tank so the gas tank wouldn't rot out. So I ran the car on varnish and blew the motor up. Well, thanks for coming by and checking out our Tales from the Bush, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps.